This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so the question here is that if is this percentile the only option working for commands? If I want to use plus minus, is there any command for that? No, percentile is just a division operator. If you want to use plus minus multiplication, you can use that. You can also use that if you want to add two numbers. You can also go ahead add two numbers out there using plus minus subtraction or these things, or you can also do such a kind of a mathematical operation using PowerShell out here. You can also do all these mathematical operators out there. Is this okay now? Fine. Great. PowerShell errors not understandable. Can you please explain once? PowerShell errors are not understandable because we don't Google enough. You have to take that error. Please Google it out. Please practice it out. Again, errors is something that I won't be able to explain completely because errors is something that you have to, let's say, face the errors in the very first hand, understand what is the error, troubleshoot that error. Again, as and when you practice it, that's when you'll understand what the error really tells you out there. And if you again say PowerShell errors are not understandable, can you explain once? Very importantly, you'll have to tell me what is the error so that I can explain the same thing out there. In the creation of RG, we can create 100 RGs at one time. So go ahead and okay, just say in the creation of RG, we have a task to create 100 RGs at a time. So going ahead, how can we deal? Did not really get your question. Can you please reiterate on the same thing? I can answer that. I have tried and it's not working. Not sure what you have tried, Swati, but if uh, let's say you want to do an addition operator out here, what you need to do is, let's say, I'll say number x is equal to something like 7, and probably you are getting some kind of an error like this. Number y is equal to something like 10, and if I do an x plus a dollar y, you're probably getting, or are you getting this particular value out here? If I do a minus 3, I do get it. I mean, PowerShell does, let's say, take all these operators and all these things out. You can also do a multiplication here. I think this is a star multiplication if I'm not wrong. Let's try this out. 70. It does work. So all these operators do work. All these operators are, let's say, well supported in PowerShell as such. Okay, like giving an array is a big task case. You don't have to really give an array. You can construct an array. We'll talk about that as well. Yes, any questions? Any more questions here? Yes, anyone? Any questions still here? All right, so we will start our session today with something called as parameterization. We were doing something called parameterization yesterday. We are talking about what parameterization really is. And from there, we'll go ahead and let's say, yesterday I've given an assignment, right? That create a resource group if not exists. If it exists, and please throw in, let's say, please throw a message telling that it already exists and all these things out. This is the area that we are going to focus upon. So let me start with something called as parameterization. And before I go into parameterization, I would just like to ask you all, what do you understand by something called as read hyphen host? Did we see this anywhere? To, let's say, take an input from a user. So you are a user who is using PowerShell, and if you want to, let's say, give an input to PowerShell, you're using something called read hyphen host out here. So let's say something like enter your name. If I run this out, it's going to wait here and it's going to say that enter your name and all these things. So I'll say something like Kiran. It's just going to go ahead display my name in written. It's just going to go ahead and let's say display my name out here, which is good, which is really good, let's say, to give some inputs to your script. So you can use multiple read hosts wherein you can say enter your age, enter your, let's say, a lot of things out here, and you can, let's say, go and store all the values out here and all that stuff, which is good, but it's not a best practice. Using a read host in your PowerShell script is not a best practice. Why am I telling this is not a best practice? Why not a best practice? It's easier. Why not? It is good, but this only works if a PowerShell terminal supports interactive usage. This is called interactive, meaning you are interacting with this particular PowerShell terminal when you're entering your name. It's giving your name back in and all that stuff, which is good enough. But this only works if the terminal you're running on this script, I mean, the terminal you're running this script on. In my case, I'm running this script on a terminal called PowerShell ISC or an application called PowerShell ISC. It only supports if the terminal that you're running the script on supports interaction, user interaction, supports something called as user interaction out here. PowerShell ISC does that. But our intention as a DevOps engineer is not to use PowerShell ISC. It is to use a tool called Azure Devops, or it is to use a tool called Jenkins or some kind of a DevOps tool and run all these scripts at a later point in time. Now, if you're using DevOps tools or if you're using advanced tools, those tools don't support interaction. Meaning, like you're entering your name out here, those tools will not let you enter the name. It'll simply throw an error telling that this is non-interactive. I do not support interaction. So I am sorry. Please figure out another way to pass inputs to your, let's say, to your PowerShell script. Because what we are doing with the read host out here is very simple. We are just passing inputs to a particular script out here. That's it. We're just doing some input parameter out here. That's it. That's the only thing that we're doing out here. Now, what I want to tell here is that instead of passing an input to your script by using something called as read host, the better way to declare an input is by using a concept called as a parameterization. What do I mean by this? Something like this. In order to use a concept called parameterization, I need to declare a function called param. I'll say param, open, close. This is called as a parameter block, or parameter function. So now I'm declaring in the very starting of my script, in the very beginning of my script, I'm going ahead and I'm giving something called as a param block, open, close brackets. Inside this, I will say dollar name, declaring an empty parameter called what? Dollar name out here. And what I'll do here, I'll say write host, my name is dollar name. So what I'm doing, let's understand this out here. The very purpose of a read host was to take an input, but now we are telling read host is not a very efficient tool, or read host is not a very efficient mechanism to take or to pass an input, because read host is as good as the terminal which, let's say, your script runs on. And if the terminal doesn't support user interaction, your read host statement will not work. Reason being, I'm substituting the read host with something called as a parameter block, and I'm now declaring a value, or I'm now declaring a parameter called dollar name. This is the declaration. Did I pass a value to this? No, no value. I passed nothing. And then I'm writing what? Write host. My name is what? Dollar name. Whatever that I declared inside that particular parameter block, I'm just reusing that particular parameter out here, telling that is dollar name out here. Let's save this script. Control S. I'll save this out. So now to save this, I'll just do a Control S, and we'll save this in the same folder called ATM, PowerShell class, and etc. We'll save this as params, and I'll save this as a .ps1 file. It's a .ps1 extension for a PowerShell script. I'll say save this out. So now I saved my file. Now what I can do is that I can call my script from anywhere. This is a script that I saved. If I open up a new terminal, if I want to call my script again, to call my script, what I'll do is I'll just go into that particular folder. Now this is the folder where I saved all my scripts in. I'll copy this script. I'll copy this entire path. I'll go here. As of now, I'm working out of a, let's say, path called C users PRADH or something like this. I'll say CD, change directory to 8 a.m. classes and all these things out here. What I can do right now is that using any terminal, I can say dot backslash. When I say dot backslash, I'm just saying look into the directory where I'm working. Just go ahead, look into the directory out here. And you have multiple scripts out here called intro.ps1 and also params.ps1 out here. Just say intro.ps1. I'll just use intro.ps1 and I'll just execute this out. What I'm doing is that if I execute this script, I'm just calling whatever is the content inside that particular PowerShell. There was a script called intro.ps1, and if I just open this out, it has what name is equal to Ravi. Hello world, name is Ravi. This is content, and it's now giving all the names and all these things out. So this was a very simple script out here. What I did is using a PowerShell terminal, I just called this script and I executed it. When I executed it, do you see? It is telling my name is Ravi and etc. So whatever was there inside the script, it's just going ahead and executing it. The other way to call a script is just going ahead and let's say calling this out here. Now I have one more script in the same directory called param.ps1, but this script has something known as an input parameter called $name, which I haven't declared yet. What I'll do is that before I execute this script, I'll give a space. I'll say hyphen. Do you see what it's giving me right now? Asking the name. PowerShell is now identifying that parameter you have declared something called as a parameter block. And before you can run your script, you can actually pass parameter block out here. I'll say name hyphen name. Yes, go ahead, please. Okay. I'll say hyphen name. In quotes, I'll just go ahead and give a name called Kiran. If I now execute this, what is it doing? Why is it doing this? Dollar name we have given. What PowerShell did is that when you passed that particular name out here during the runtime, it said dollar name. Okay, fine. User is passing is equal to what? Kiran, and it just did write this particular dollar name in return. Let's say I want to write a different thing. I'll say dollar name, and I also want to write I belong to Hyderabad. What I can do is give a comma here inside my parameter block. Declared one more parameter called what? Location. And I can now start using and I can now start telling that right host. Yes, I belong to that dollar location. And I can save this out. Once I save it out, if I go back here, this can be called anywhere. From anywhere you can call this out. If I recall this out once again, params.ps1, you have now a provision to pass even the location. So how many ever comma separated values you give, so many PowerShell is going to accept. So I'll say Kiran and I'll say location is HYD Hyderabad. And if I now run this out, I'm getting an output here telling my name is Kiran. I belong to what? Hyderabad out here. A better way to pass your input. Same, it works like read host only, but a better way than a read host. Reason being, in this way, you can pass the script parameters in a non-interactive way. This is what, let's say, PowerShell, or this is what, let's say, DevOps and all. This is what we do in Azure DevOps. We try to pass the parameters in a non-interactive way so that it doesn't fail. So this is what parameterization really gives us. So you You can go ahead, declare multiple parameters out here. You can have multiple parameters called dollar name, dollar location, and etc. And you can pass all these parameters before you actually go ahead and execute your script. This is what you can do. In read host, what am I doing? I'm first executing my script and then passing the parameters, because PowerShell ISC does support interaction, but there are few terminals which do not support interactions at all, which where I cannot go ahead and let's say pass all these things out there. Reason being, I'm coming up with something called as a param block. This is what a parameter really means out here. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here that I can take? Let me. Yes, the conference is being recorded. I'll just unmute people online so that I can take some questions and I can address that and then I can move forward. Yes, anyone, any questions that I can take till here?
Params.ps1 is a file name, right?
Correct. Params.ps1 is a file name. This can be anything. xyz.ps1 or anything. I'm just calling the file name, and when I'm calling the file name, I'm passing the parameter by giving something called as a hyphen out here.
Okay.
Can you pass an array? Good
Okay.
question. Yes. You can pass an array as well inside the parameter. Yes, someone online had a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Dot means is it directory path, the
Yes,
folder
dot
path
means it's a
where the file
correct.
contains?
Dot means correct. Dot means here it's a folder path. So what am I doing is that I change my directory out here. And what am I doing is that if I say a dot and backslash, I'm looking inside that particular directory which I'm working in. And now see, if you look at this one, it's showing me that okay, fine, these are the files that are there inside this particular directory. So dot backslash is just looking into the directory. It's just another way to call the entire path. You can also do this. If I go here and take the entire path out here, I can replace this dot backslash with the entire path. Even this works. If I just go ahead and say backslash out here, it's showing intro.ps1 or it's showing, let's say, param.ps1 and all these things out here. So it's just another way to call the entire file path. Instead of, let's say, giving the entire file, I'm just doing a dot and backslash out there. Yes, any questions? Anyone, any more questions?
Do we need to change directory to call this file?
The reason I changed to, let's say, change the directory is it's easy for me to just go ahead and call it in this way. But you do not really have to change a directory. If you do not, please pass the entire directory path out there.
Okay.
And let's see, here the dollar name, we accept a single name, but what about an array? If you want to pass an array, you just have to define that it's an array parameter out there. I mean, you can also pass an array, not a problem. You can also go ahead and give an array out here. It'll still accept. Shouldn't be a problem. All right, so this was the parameterization concept, but how do I apply it to, let's say, something like PowerShell? I mean, so how do I apply it to something like Azure? Because now I'm trying to, let's say, use all this knowledge and go ahead and create something called as a resource group out there, right? So what I want to do is that same thing. I'll use the same script, name, location, but this one is a resource group name, and this is a resource group location. And I'll say in the right host, I'll say creating a resource group with the name, dollar name, in the location, dollar location. And then I can go ahead and give my command to create the resource group, which is what? New hyphen az resource group hyphen name is what right now? Dollar rg name. This is also dollar rg name, not name. And then I can say dollar hyphen location. I can say what? Dollar location out here. So whatever I did earlier, now I am not passing the name or I'm not passing the location as a direct value. I'm calling rather the parameter. So now if I save this out and if I now go back into my script, the way I'm calling my script, I say dot backslash, call the script out here, say space, rg name, s01, location, east us2. And if I execute this out, saying creating rg with the name what, test01 in the location what, east us2, and it ended up creating. So I passed the same parameter. I use the same parameter concept, but what I did is that I just changed the nature of it. I said write host instead of saying my name is Kiran. I'm saying write host, the name of the resource group that is passed is something like this, and the name of the and the location where you're creating this is something like this. And then I ran my command called what? New hyphen az resource group name, resource group location, all these things out. And if you go into the Azure portal, it should have created a resource group with this particular name called what? Test01. This is what I did using a parameter concept. So yesterday what I did, I was doing a read host. Today what I'm doing, I'm doing let's say a parameter concept out here, and I'm directly reading the parameter. I'm directly let's say going in and passing all these parameters to the runtime of my script. But there is still an issue with this. The issue what I'm coming down to is that my script is good, but the script is not reusable. I have taken out the reusability out of the script, meaning my intention yesterday is that if someone is using the script, if the resource group already exists, you just tell, you know what, it exists, I don't create one. So if yes, you should simply say already exists, skipping creation. If no, then it should go ahead and create. If no, then go ahead and create this out. This is what my intention is supposed to be. But what is happening here is this. If I pass the same values, if I execute this out, it's telling provided resource group already exists. Are you sure you want to update it? And I'll say yes. It won't do anything. It literally go and it literally, let's say, go ahead and let's say do a simple update to that particular resource group out here. Again, it's saying provision is succeeded and all that stuff. So the point here is that I'm not giving a user any flexibility to go ahead and let's say pass or let's say let know that the resource group already exists and you have to pass a new name out here. I'm not giving any room for that particular user out there. In order to introduce some reusability, firstly, what I'll do is I'll first check whether the resource group that you have as a user. So what I did is that I created this particular script and I'm giving this particular script to you. And I'm telling you know what, each and everyone in the class can use this script and let's say go ahead and create their own resource groups. So each and everyone is let's say trying to create their own resource groups. But what I try to do is that firstly, when you pass a name of a resource group, I want to check whether that resource group exists or not. How do I check whether a resource group exists or not? What is the command to check whether a resource group is existing or not? Is there a command to check whether the resource group is there or not? Yes, no, maybe.
If
Is there
else.
any command?
In,
Yes, go ahead, please.
in,
Get hyphen easy resource group will get a particular resource group. Exactly. So what I'll do is I'll write something called dollar. Okay. I'll just come here and I'll just write something called as dollar status. I want to check the status of a resource group. I'll say equal to get hyphen az resource group. Now what we did yesterday is that we simply ran this command called what? Get hyphen az resource group, and this was returning all the resource groups for me. But I don't want to check all the resource groups. I just want to check whether the resource group name that you are passing is that existing or not. If it is existing, then I'll simply say, you know what, I won't create it. If it is not, I'll just go ahead and create this out. So what I'll do, I'll give a space hyphen name, and I'll do what? Dollar $RG name. Very simple. I'm just giving a dollar $RG name out here. So what I'm doing is I'm checking the existence of the resource group that you are passing, because I'm just concerned to check the name of the resource group that you are passing, not everything else as such. And hyphen location, I can also give a location that you're passing out here. And I'm now checking for the existence of this. Let's do one thing. I will go ahead and comment out a couple of things out here, and then we'll try to run our scripts. And let's see how the script actually behaves. So I'm commenting multiple lines using my hash. I'll go into the script out here. Let's call this once again RG name, and I will say test hyphen 02. I'll pass a new name out here called test hyphen 02, and I'll say this is something like West US. Now, does test hyphen 02 exist in my portal? Only test hyphen 01 does exist in my portal. So I want to check for the existence of this particular resource group, and I'll just go ahead and run this out. It's giving you an error in written. What is it telling you in the error? Does not exist, which I know. Right? I mean, if the resource group does not exist, what it is supposed to do? It's supposed to go and create something out. But my script is throwing what? An error. Because the command is expected to behave like that. The command called get-ag resource group is expected to throw an error if you do not get a resource group. That's the behavior of that particular command. I want to change that particular behavior. The reason being, I know that if you are, let's say, a new user, you are trying to create a new resource group, it is not supposed to throw an error. It is just supposed to tell you that the resource group is not existing. I will create a new one. That's it. That's what it needs to tell. But instead of which, what is happening right now? It's throwing an error. Exactly. It's throwing an error here telling that the provided resource group does not exist, which I already know. And I deliberately want it to stop throwing the error because I want to create something new out here. So what I can do is that I can change the nature of this particular command. I can tell that command that, you know what, I know that I'll get an error here if the resource group doesn't exist, but I don't want an error. I know what to do with that. So what I'll do is I'll pass one more flag out here called error action to tell what it's just supposed to do. Guys, can you please go on mute if you're not speaking online? Now there is one more flag that I'm passing here called what? Error action. I'll give a space. I will say silently continue. I know that there is an error, but please silently continue because I know what to do if I get an error out here. What I'll do is I'll create a resource group if it is not existing. So I'll just save this out. Now the nature of it slightly changes. If I run the same thing, it did not give me any error this time. It did not give me any error as such. Earlier what happened? It gave me an error, but I don't want an error because if I give this script to you as a user and you're trying to use it, and if you get an error, you will get confused. You do not know what to do with that particular error because when you give this script to a client that you're working with, the client who's, let's say, a non-technical person may not understand the script. Because if a client understands the scripts, then what is the need to hire you to write the script? You can well as well write that script, right? So what we need to do is that we need to make our scripts a little more intelligent to handle all these things out. Now I'll come back to my script, and this is what I'll do. The main intention is just not to check the status of something, but to check the status and to create if the resource group does not exist. So what I'll do